The entire hangar went silent the moment the general raised his hand and said, "Nobody touches this jet. No civilian is allowed anywhere near it." Hundreds of eyes turned toward the man standing alone near the aircraft, holding an old leather bag in one hand and a worn folder in the other. He wasn't wearing a uniform. He didn't have medals on his chest. He didn't look like someone who belonged in a place filled with military legends and powerful machines. He looked like an ordinary father who had walked into a world that was never meant for him. But what nobody knew was that the folder in his hand carried a story the Air Force had buried for years. A story about sacrifice, loss, and a promise made long ago. And when the general finally saw what was inside that file, the entire room changed forever. Before we begin this emotional journey, if you believe that kindness, second chances, and the power of a good heart can change someone's life, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to our channel, Beyond Single Dad, for more inspiring stories like this. The morning started like any other difficult morning for Marcus Vale, a single father trying to hold his small family together. Every day began before sunrise. He prepared breakfast, packed his daughter's lunch, checked her homework, and made sure she smiled before leaving for school. He had learned to become both a father and a mother after life took away the person who once shared those responsibilities with him. Marcus wasn't a rich man. He lived in a small apartment where the walls carried memories and the furniture had been repaired more times than he could count. He worked as an aircraft maintenance technician at a small private company, fixing engines and repairing machines that most people never noticed. He didn't chase fame. He didn't want attention. He only wanted to give his daughter, Nora, a stable life. But there was one thing about Marcus that nobody at work knew. Years ago, before he became a single father, he had been part of something extraordinary. He had worked around military aircraft, not as a pilot or officer, but as a skilled engineer who understood machines in a way few people did. He could hear a strange engine sound and know exactly what was wrong. He could look at a damaged aircraft and see the hidden problem others missed. But after a tragic accident took the life of his closest friend and changed his entire world, Marcus walked away from that life. He left behind the hangars, the uniforms, and the aircraft he once loved. He chose his daughter over everything else. Years passed. Then one afternoon, Marcus received an unexpected letter. The message was short, but it carried a weight he couldn't ignore. A legendary aircraft from his past was being restored at a military facility, and there was a problem. The engineers couldn't figure out why the system kept failing. The aircraft was one of a kind. And someone had recommended Marcus. When he arrived at the military hangar, he immediately felt out of place. The massive doors opened, revealing a world of uniforms, technology, and history. Soldiers walked with confidence. Officers spoke with authority. Everyone seemed to belong except him. Marcus walked slowly toward the aircraft, staring at the machine that brought back memories he had tried to forget. Then the general stepped forward. His name was General Everett Halston, a respected military leader known for his strict rules and serious attitude. He looked at Marcus from head to toe and immediately noticed he wasn't wearing a uniform. "You are not authorized personnel," the general said firmly. Marcus calmly explained why he was there. He showed the invitation letter and explained that he had been asked to inspect the aircraft. But the general looked at the paper and shook his head. "This is a military aircraft," he said. "No civilian can touch this jet." The words echoed through the hangar. Some people looked away. Others quietly watched. Marcus felt every eye on him. He had spent years fighting to prove himself, and in one sentence, he felt like he was back at the beginning again. He could have walked away. Maybe that would have been easier. He thought about his daughter waiting at home. He thought about how many times life had told him he wasn't enough. But something inside him told him that this moment mattered. "General," Marcus said quietly, "I understand your concern. But before you decide I don't belong here, I need you to see something." He reached into his old leather bag and pulled out the worn folder. The general looked curious but remained cautious. Marcus opened the file. Inside were old photographs, technical documents, and a letter covered with signatures. The room slowly became silent as the general read the first page. The file wasn't about Marcus. It was about someone else. A man named Captain Rowan Pierce. A pilot who had saved dozens of lives during a dangerous mission many years earlier. A pilot who never returned home. The general's expression changed. Because he knew that name. Everyone in that hangar knew that name. Captain Rowan Pierce wasn't just a hero. He was a legend. Marcus looked at the aircraft and took a deep breath. He wasn't just my friend, Marcus said. He was the reason I'm alive today. The hangar became completely still. Marcus explained that years ago, during a dangerous test flight, Rowan's aircraft suffered a critical failure. Marcus was the engineer who discovered the problem. He had warned the team, but time was running out. Rowan could have abandoned the mission, but instead, he chose to protect the people on the ground. He flew the aircraft away from a populated area, saving countless lives. But he never came back. Marcus had spent years carrying the memory of that day. And the folder contained something else. A final message Rowan had written before that mission. A message Marcus had kept all those years because he never had the courage to share it. The general slowly read the words. It was a thank you letter. Rowan had written that if anything happened to him, he wanted people to know that Marcus Vale was the reason the aircraft was safe for everyone. He wanted the world to know that the quiet engineer behind the scenes was one of the bravest people he had ever known. The general lowered the file. For the first time, his strict expression disappeared. He looked at Marcus, not as a civilian. Not as an outsider. But as someone who had carried a hero's memory alone for years. I had no idea, the general whispered. Marcus simply nodded. I didn't bring this file to prove I'm important, he said. I brought it because that aircraft deserves to fly again. It carries the story of people who gave everything. The general looked back at the jet. Then he stepped aside. Show us what you know. Marcus walked toward the aircraft. The same people who had watched him with doubt now watched him with respect. He examined the system carefully, listening to every sound, checking every detail. Within minutes, he noticed something the team had overlooked. A small failure in a hidden connection. A problem that could have damaged the entire restoration. The engineers fixed the issue. And when the aircraft finally powered up, the sound filled the hangar like a memory returning home. Marcus stood there quietly, remembering Rowan. Remembering everything he had lost. But also realizing something important. Sometimes the people who make the biggest difference are not the ones standing in the spotlight. Sometimes they are the ones carrying old files, old memories, and old promises that nobody else understands. Months later, Marcus received a special invitation. Not just to visit the aircraft, but to attend a ceremony honoring those who worked behind the scenes. He brought Nora with him. As she stood beside her father, looking at the aircraft, she finally understood why her father had always told her that kindness and courage mattered more than titles. The man everyone called a civilian had reminded an entire room what true heroism looked like. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that everyone carries a hidden story, please engage with this video by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your support helps these stories reach more people who need a reminder that kindness still matters. And before the ending, write in the comments, a hero doesn't always wear a uniform. I want to know if you believe the quiet people behind the scenes deserve to be recognized too. Because sometimes, the person standing outside the door isn't someone who doesn't belong. Sometimes, they're the person who was always meant to open it.